Hi everyone, I am Stacy Sins. Welcome to Built Differently, a show featuring ambitious women doing life and leadership on their own terms. I am so excited for our first guest, Angel Johnson. She is incredible and is building an awesome company. Welcome. It's so great to see you, Angel.
Thank you for having me, Stacy. I appreciate it.
I like to start things a little bit differently and start with a fun question of what was your first job and what are you currently up to, friend?
My first job was at Wendy's when I was 16 years old. My mom at the time was the general manager and a district manager. So it was kind of a natural progression. Everyone in my family, their first job was Wendy's because of that connection.
I love that. I feel like everyone needs to work in the food industry at some point. It teaches you so many things.
Yes, it does. And then right now, I'm currently the CEO and founder of ICONI. It's a motivational and inclusive activewear brand based in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah. And I was telling you before the show how I love watching you on Instagram and how you're so great about putting yourself out there. And so I feel like I know you, although I'm still getting to know you. But I know the audience will love to learn about you. You know, your background has definitely taken an unconventional path. Having your military background, to startup life and, from a non-military person looking in from the outside in, I think of that life as very structured and regimen. And then I think about building a startup and how it ebbs and flows and, there's no clear path. How has that been going from those two very, what I perceive as different worlds?
Well, they are very different worlds, but still alike. So the military what is structured, but in the Air Force, every general or colonel would always say flexibility is the key to air power. So
Oh,
they would let you know pretty that pretty much meant if you were a mid-level leader, like things can change at any time and you need to deal with it and you need to follow through and tell everyone else beneath you to follow through as well.
yeah. I
So
did not know that. That's really interesting to hear. And I think that makes sense. I mean, up in the air, you can imagine.
and it's just every part of the Air Force, they always say that flexibility is the key to air power. So translating that into my business, I try to remain flexible. When I first started out, I had a incredibly hard time just knowing what kind of schedule I wanted to have. Like I thought, like, oh, I need to wake up at 7. I see on Instagram, like really successful entrepreneurs, they wake up at 7 or 5 a.m. And then as I went through my journey, people kept on telling me, well, isn't that the whole point of entrepreneurship? You can wake up whenever you want as long as you get your work done. I was like, oh, well, yes, that makes sense. But the military background has kept me structured. So when I do tell people I'm a fashion brand owner, they don't believe it usually. I don't know what kind of brand owner they expect me to be, but they're like, "Oh, you're very regimented. What did you do before you got into fashion?" And I said, "Oh, I was in the military." Like, "Oh, that makes sense."
Well, right, because when you think of creative industries and things like fashion, you often think about more that free flowing ebb and flow. But I love that you're bringing that, more structured approach to, and probably a part of your is a piece of that success you're having.
I think so. And then even when we're on set, like prior to set, like creative photo shoots, I do all the creating beforehand and I give it out to the videographer and the photographers and model. And then when I'm on set, I'm more rigid, like, hey guys, it's 10:25. We're gonna move in 5 minutes. 10:30,
Yes.
we're moving. Or like my models and photographers and videographers, they tell me all the time, like, we can't read you. Sometimes you just sit there in the corner and your face is just blank. And I was like, well, I'm just thinking, or I'm just taking in the moment, guys. I don't know what you wanted me to do.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about that before we started, how, I'm so impressed by you about how real you are on Instagram. I think Instagram is so often just the highlight reels and following you and hearing you how you're building your company. And we were sharing how it's one thing on writing versus the whole in person. Share a bit more because when you put yourself out there on social media and when you're building a brand, it is very much about the founder. So how has that been as one introvert to another?
Well, it's been a total transformation. So before I had a business, I didn't really have Instagram. I just posted like vacation photos and it was all private page. And then when I became a founder, someone's told me, hey, you should probably have a public page. You are a founder and you should probably have a LinkedIn. So things I'd never had because in the military, I was an intelligence officer. I was told those are none of the things you should have. So I
Right.
had to start kind of fresh. I wasn't an influencer. So now a lot of people say like, oh, I appreciate your transparency. I was like, well, this is just kind of how I am. I don't feel like I'm embarrassing myself or anything. I'm
No.
just kind of, hey, this is a normal founder life. Like I don't, I mean, here's the candor. It's just a normal founder life for me. And it just, I guess it's easy to say that because I like writing. I like expressing myself through a written word. I think it's like a lost art. So
Yeah.
I like really appreciate that.
Yeah. No, I think that's so great. And I feel like because I've followed you, I feel like I know your story. But for anyone watching or listening who has never met or heard of you, I'm curious, what was the spark behind launching? I mean, when you hear it from the outside looking in, you're like, Air Force, fashion brand. How do we get from A to B? Really, A to Z. What was that spark that got the company going?
So for me, I am like a master executor. I know it's kind of weird to say, but like for me, I don't put things out or say I'm going to do stuff unless I'm actually going to do it. If
Mm.
anything other than that, it just stays within my brain.
Oh,
So one day I told my friends like, hey, I'm going to make an activewear company because I'm tired of going to military gyms and my activewear being see-through. Because
yeah.
that one time I had an embarrassing moment at a military gym where someone came up to me and they said, I don't know what type of leggings those are, but I can see everything. And I was
Oh,
like, there's no way. There's no way. 'Cause I paid $90 for these leggings. And when I'm
right.
looking at myself at home, they are they are fine. But then
Sure.
like when you're squatting down, it's like, ugh, oh my gosh. And I'm used to working out in like Air Force clothing. And I went to a military college. So I was used to working out in a uniform all the time. So I was like, oh great. First time I dressed myself. It's
Yeah.
true. So that's what kind of sparked it. And then I was thinking, what does my life look like if I didn't want to stay in the military? Because at the time, I could definitely tell, like, I was all about what is Captain Johnson's life. Like, Angel Johnson had no life. So I know I hadn't, like, people are like, what were your hobbies? I was like, I had no hobbies. The
Right.
military was my hobby, is my whole life. So,
Right. No, absolutely. I think that's so great. And I think it's interesting that you launch something like this company and it is a brand, it is a product, but it's so much more than that. It really seems like you're building this platform and this real mission-driven, purpose-driven experience. Give me a little window into that and how it feels to not only be building this amazing product and the difficulty of that, but also making it so much more than that.
so for me, I'm a very deep person. I overthink everything.
Yeah,
So,
right there with you.
So I couldn't just build a like leggings company. That wouldn't have been enough for me. So like in making sure I include people, that's always been something for me because it's like, hey, I have friends from different backgrounds, they're different shapes, they're different sizes. I want them to be able to wear my activewear, and that's how it kind of started off.
Yeah.
And then with every like little bit of feedback, like, oh, I like your activewear, I wish you would add something for this type of person. I was like, oh, okay, well, I didn't even think that, like blind zone. So and
Yes.
now as we can continue to grow, I see that people want community. So that's
Mm.
why we launched our first ICONI IRL in real life event. And it was good. We just brought a small group of women together. We kept the list like very, very short. I just kind of like a test, but the feedback we got was amazing. Some of the women were like, oh, I really needed this. And when they said needed, I was like, oh, wow, we kind of have something here. And then we were getting messages like, okay, what's the next city? Because you did Denver, you live in Denver, but what's the next city? I was like, oh, you all really want this. It's like, so sometimes I have to like take a step back. I'm like, wow, people want to engage with the brand. They want to be a part of this.
Absolutely. And your brand, the name, it means more than it, I mean, it's a really cool name, but it's an acronym too, correct?
Yes, it stands for I can overcome, nothing's impossible.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. And when you're building a really cool brand like that and doing these things, like you're in person, you're testing and going about all sorts of fun, different things and trying new things. And it is about doing things, but it's also about saying no to different opportunities. And that can be hard sometimes as a founder to know what should I say yes to, what should I say no to, and how am I not just on that hamster wheel of doing 450 things. I'm curious if there's anything that you've said no to that you think really helped you to get where you are?
I think I've said no to a lot of things. I think
I think you're really good at that. When we
yeah,
met
when I
coffee,
first
you kind
talked
of
to
shared like the no for a lot of women, no, it's hard. I'm really impressed by you that you have this ability to say no.
but I think I'm able to say no because I've seen what happens when you don't say no. Like so I won't give specific companies, but I felt like I have been taken advantage of by larger partners before. Like kind of using me as a person, like, oh, hey, we got a Black woman. Let's put on this dog and pony show. But then in the back end, my company really didn't benefit from it and I didn't benefit from it. So I told myself I won't let that happen. So now I have like, I've went full Air Force. I have a full-on decision matrix.
Oh, do you really?
Oh, I really do. It has a grading criteria and it weighs it's like a calculator, have an Excel, it weighs everything. So I plug in a score. If it's a media opportunity that's gonna like cost me, I plug in a score, and if it gets a certain score, it can be done. If it doesn't get a certain score, it cannot be done.
Okay, hold on. We need to dig into this because as a founder, I mean, that's one of the hardest things is there's all these, especially when you're out there in the public, when you're on social media like you are, I felt like as a founder, everybody wanted a piece of me. And it's like everyone's so great at, the razzle dazzle. This is going to be the best thing ever for you. And so I remember as a founder, it was really hard to decide what to do and not do. So when I'm hearing about this decision calculator, I'm like, how did she build it? Will she share it? And if nothing else, I'm just curious for you to share a bit more about that so other founders can take some of that military intelligence mind of yours and make better decisions. Because that really, I think, is what sets founders apart, right? Because when you're just going down the rabbit hole, you look back and you're like, oh, well, that was a waste of time, money, energy.
So I think when you're first starting off, you won't be able to build this. So I think it is some trial and error at the beginning. And I did have a friend, suggest this to me because he works more in tech. So he had
Okay.
a tech kind of finance mind that says like, hey, I see you're struggling with this. You're always struggling with this. Why don't you make some type of decision matrix? I was like, well, yes, because we did that in the military. It's like, yes, let's do the decision matrix. So it's like my criteria is like potential for sales, cost, profitability, inventory readiness. So that's like weighs on me because sometimes certain media opportunities require you they try to dictate how much inventory you have. So that requires you to maybe spin up and try to get your manufacturer to produce and ship more inventory. So if you're shipping and producing at a faster rate, that costs more money. And then also like, founders letting someone else dictate your inventory. So they may think their audience will buy it, but just kind of like you need to merge the two. Like, okay, yes, your audience may like a certain thing, but I know what sells from my store.
Yeah.
We do target audience alignment. So we'll align, or is this not really my target audience, but it could be like a quick sales kind of grab. So you have to kind of weigh those things, because if it is a quick kind of sales grab, you have to know those people may not come back, especially if they're just deal seekers. And then one, which is kind of like very kind of, you have to figure it out, is brand credibility boost. So like, hey, what does it build? And then we have I'm like looking over my notes. Last thing we have is customer data collection, control over sales platform, and then post-sale customer engagement. All those are important because if you can't get to know the customers afterwards, that could be a fail. You can't re-engage them if you're not going to have any of their data, such as like, hey, can I email them afterwards? Do I even have their email? And then who controls the sales platform? Because if you don't control the sales platform, that means you're always getting your data later.
So it sounds like you really took time to think through all the components and pieces of the things that make your company successful, and that's how you sort of built this matrix for you. It sounds like too that this is not something you did initially, but even I know companies that are 5 years in, 6 years in, that their head would be spinning now. Was it just through trial and error, or did somebody help you to pick out those key things? It's really impressive, and I'm like, how can we get more people to think like Angel?
It was really through trial and error. Well, going back to my friend, he's a very like pros and cons type of guy. And I tend not see the world so black and white. Everything's pretty gray to me. So like listening, hey, what are the like pros and cons for each and future considerations? And then like after I did like 3 or 4 media opportunities, the same thing kept on coming up.
Yes.
It kept on coming up, and I was like, oh, and like for me, it was always inventory readiness. It's like every time I don't have a certain inventory. So one, I either need to learn how to negotiate inventory readiness, or I need to have more inventory on stock. But the decision matrix also helped me in one of our last media things, because I actually negotiated a media thing for like the first time in 5 years. I said, oh, actually that won't work for me. These are the terms that are better for us. And and this is why it would work for both of us. And they were like, oh, okay. And I was like, oh shoot, you can negotiate.
Yes. That's so interesting. And part of this podcast and just the way I'm going about things these days is thinking about building things differently, right? And it's like, I think we're so trained to think about things as or. It's either success or failure. You can do it or you can't, and what I'm hearing when you're talking about is that you're playing and living more in this nuance of the and. I'm curious, like, how that's been showing up for you, both in business and life, and how do you juggle all the things for people who don't know? I know you're getting your MBA. Did you just finish your first year with your MBA? I know you're a caregiver. I mean, I just think that there's so many just hearing your story about your business alone, it's like, wow, she's, doing really cool things. And then you add on all these other layers. How are you showing up in the world differently, navigating all the things and living in the world of and?
Well, I think I've always tried to be an and person rather than or person. And I think that goes down to like how our mindset is. And I always thought mindset was like the biggest load of crap when you came into business, but it really is. It's like
Ain't that the truth?
it's like the richest people in the world say, oh, it's your mindset. I was like, oh, I think it's the money.
Yeah.
But it's like it's so many people would try to make you say, or like, oh, you can't be a successful, you can't have a successful business and not and like if you have a successful business, you're going to end up exploiting people. I was like, okay, well, why can't you build a sustainable business that doesn't exploit people and have a successful business?
Yes.
And like even in like relationships, like we see that all the time, relationship podcasts. Why can't you have someone that aligns with your goals and can make you happy and you have fun with? It's like, well, why can't I be a business owner and have fun?
Yes.
So I think when we put ourselves in, when we do, or we like restrict ourselves for what we can do. So I just been to try to approach this like, hey, I can run a successful business and take rest.
Yes.
My business doesn't have to be, it's not on a timeline. No one's telling me what the timeline is. I am deciding the timeline. So I think that's kind of helped me. It's obviously like trial and error. And then it's like, I feel like I'm getting like deeply reflective as the years go on. So it's like, it's definitely something to the mindset part of business.
Oh, absolutely. When people ask me, like, what does it take to become a founder or start a company? I'm like, do a lot of self-work. That's what you got to do. Do a lot of self-work because it's going to push you. Well, in that timing piece, we talked about that in the intro as I stumbled along, this idea of purpose and patience, right? I think so often founders, based on what we're seeing, $2 million in a year, whatever it is, these companies that are the unicorns and built yesterday, and the reality is the statistics actually show that it takes, for companies to get the 10 million mark, it takes at least on average 7 to 10 years, right? But we don't hear that. We just hear about the unicorns and the ones that take a very different path. And it really seems like you are building both with purpose and patience. How is that like going, and kind of what are some of your struggles with that, or do you feel like that's an accurate representation?
I think so. Like I struggle with patience. That's the one thing that I have had to like ask like of myself, like, hey, you got to practice patience. But I also think it helps me being a caregiver. Like, so I
Yes.
can't give 24 hours a day to my business. That just does not work. And
Mm.
I can give, but I am so happy to caregive. And caregiving is always going to be, and I'll put this out in the world. It's
Yeah.
going to be above my business because that's
Yes.
something that I love and I'm taking
Absolutely.
care of them.
Mm.
So I've had to practice patience, and I think it kind of like life hits you at a certain point where it needs you to practice patience. Because I think I would have like gone off the rails if I would have thought about it. Like when I started taking care of when I started being a caregiver at the end of 2022, I was like running myself down into the ground. And then when I think of like my caregiving journey, I remember being in the hospital when it was like a quiet time and like typing and doing a pitch deck. And I was like, resilience or crazy, because it's kind of a balance. But now, like I've heard this term, it's called like an elephant business. So it's not like a unicorn. I've heard it like it's like elephants are very slow moving animals, but they're around. They live a lot longer than a lot of other animals, but they're not like the sexy thing like
Mm.
unicorns, right? So like I was like, oh, like that's what I kind of feel like I'm building. I'm building an elephant business. They can go slower, but I want it to be more lasting, because the companies I do study, they've been around so long. Like, hey, I want to study someone like Pepsi or JC Penney or something like that, like, or like TJ Maxx. I want to study those companies and those brands that have been been around a lot longer, and they like persisted. Like for me, I, not to harp on TJ Maxx, but just like the fact like TJ Maxx is like a treasure trove in person in a digital world, and they still exist, is amazing.
Yeah, no, they're such an interesting company. And there was a viral TikTok all about them, and then it was quite fun. No, and I think that's so interesting, the whole caregiving component. I think so many women building companies in some way, shape, or form, yeah, obviously different for different people, navigating this component of caregiving, and whether that looks like someone who's struggling with health or whether that looks like showing up as a mother or whatever it may be. And I love that you're talking about being in the hospital. And is it, crazy, or is it, this whole idea of navigating those worlds? And it's just really not easy. And I think the hardest part sometimes is the story we tell ourselves. Like, I'm not good enough because I'm putting this forward. And it sounds like you have just kind of came to peace with it and saying, this is what it is. Have you always been that way? Is that your wiring, or is that something you've evolved and gotten to that place of like acceptance of, the reality is the reality, and this is how I'm showing up, and the rest is what it is?
I think I've always been a pretty grounded person, but like when I first started caregiving, I was like, oh, this is going to ruin my business. I'm not going to be able to like be at every event and stuff. And I was like, did I really need to be at every event? Did I really need to do all of that? I didn't, probably. Yes,
Right,
and may miss an opportunity due to caregiving, but maybe that opportunity wasn't for me.
right.
And then it's like the people that I need around me should understand like caregiving. Like I've been on Zoom calls with moms, and they have like children in the background. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, why? Those are like little humans. They're like exploring the world for the first time. Like, oh, if I hear a scream or something, I was like, okay, I can move on about my day. I'm the adult. I can choose. Like, you cannot
Yeah.
choose what's going on. And I think that kind of affects how we show up in the world also, because we're worried about how people will receive us. Like, oh,
Yeah.
your mom, how are people going to think I'm not dedicated because you have to take your kids to school or pick them up? It's like, that doesn't show a lack of dedication. That shows that you can actually balance, and that you're resilient, and that you care about, you have a purpose outside of business.
Yeah. No, I think that's so true. And again, I think it's a story we tell ourselves, right? And women, I remember when I was building my companies, I wasn't yet a mother, and I was navigating all sorts of things. It was my baby, right? And and I was so consumed with it in a way that wasn't healthy in my life. And so I do think having this other thing, like you mentioned with caregiving, does help you to build differently and appreciate things. And so speaking of appreciating things, it sounds like when I was digging into your research and remembering your Instagram, being featured on Oprah's favorite things. Is that correct? Did I get that right? I mean, that's a
Yeah.
big deal. My dream has always been to be on Oprah. When Oprah had her show, I can't tell you how many times I've been on the phone trying to get on her show. My mom and I would watch it. She's one of my favorite icons. Being featured on Oprah's favorite things for our founder is a really big deal. How did you navigate that? And I'm curious, something people don't talk about as much. I don't think everyone experiences this, but when I was a founder and I would do something really cool like that, never that cool. Afterwards, I would have something I would call big moment hangovers, because I think I expected to feel a certain way when something of that caliber happened. And for me, weirdly, sometimes I would have lows instead of highs after those experiences. I'm curious to hear kind of your experience being featured on Oprah's favorite thing. That's a big deal.
Well, covering the first part, like how I feel, people around me have told me that I do not appreciate the moment I'm in. So I'm trying to be more reflective. Like by the time a thing has happened, I have already moved on.
Me
Like
too.
I'm like, okay, like, yay, we got into it. Okay, what's the next thing? Or, oh, I could have done this differently, or beat myself up along the way. So I have been told like, hey, you need to stop and appreciate it. And it's been one of like my business mentors. She's like one of the people closest to me. And she's like, every time you tell me you're doing something amazing, your face is always the same. And I was like, this may just be my face at this point, but I'm like screaming on the inside, but it's like, I
Sure.
want to just keep a cool demeanor. But like
Oh,
being in Oprah's favorite things. So I was still in the military at the time. The way that it worked out, so I don't know how they found me. I know a lot of people ask that, don't know that. So
they found you. That's even
yeah, so
bigger
they
deal.
reached out to me. So I don't know. um, And then when I found out I got in, I was still in the military at the time. And I like had to go to my commanders, and I hadn't told them I had a business. So I went to my commander. I said, "Hey, let me just be straight with you. I have a business. I've been running it since like January of this year. I always come to work. I always do my work. I was wondering if I can use all my leave and take a month of leave because I got into Oprah's favorite things and just his face and just like and then the people in my office. When I told them their reaction, like, "Oh, you have had a business this whole time," and I think it worked because it was during the COVID times. So
Okay.
for the people who were at work, and I was one of the required people that had to be at work every day. So it's like it didn't look any different. I was just at work every day, but it was like by
Sure.
myself. Um, so then but they were all very supportive. They all got the magazine, like, "Oh, just sign my copy so when you're famous." So everyone was really supportive. I took like a month off from the military, and at the time I still had ICONI was still in my apartment,
Oh, wow.
like packing. I had a friend helping me pack from like the kitchen of my apartment, and we were just like packing leggings and getting everything ready. And like the build up to it, like maybe a month before the actual release, and I knew about it. I had to like get everything ready. So, oh, I probably need more labels. I probably need more things. I was like, oh, I need more of everything. And then
Right.
I charged all the leggings on my credit card because I could not get a bank loan. I was just lucky I
Sure.
had high credit limits. Because they
Yeah.
were like, "Oh, I don't. What is Oprah?" They were like bankers, and I was like, "Well, it's going to be a really big thing." They're like, "Well, can you? You're just in your first year of business." So I was like, "You know what? I don't have time for this. We have a short time window. Charge everything on my credit cards, and it all worked out in the end." And it did.
Yes. I didn't realize that was in your first couple of years of business. That's even a
My first year, my first year.
nothing like trial by fire. No wonder your matrix, your decision matrix is so detailed because to start with that kind of bang, that's incredible. Well, and when I think about building a business, and looking at it from the outside in, how I defined success and what I thought success would look and feel like when I started was very different for me than when I actually got into the thick of things. I'm curious, I mean, especially having started your company with Oprah, I'm curious how your definition of success and what that looks and feel like has changed as you continue to build. Because Iconi's been around, what, 5 years now?
Yes. Um,
Yeah.
so when you start off at Oprah, it's like you're starting off at the peak because
I
and
mean, right?
then everything after that is like a disappointment afterwards. So not exactly, but it's just like,
I know what you mean, though. I mean, your bar is up
yeah, I
here.
expected. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna be making this many sales. And then when like the Oprah kind of bubble went down, I was like, oh, it doesn't stay forever. And I was like, oh, there are probably things I should have been doing during Oprah to make sure I have a good like funnel after Oprah, but I didn't know all that because I was still in my first year of business. And this was supposed to be like a side thing because I was still in the military.
Right.
Oh, all these things I need to be doing. But
Yes.
but now like I feel like I'm more reflective, and I think that's just like trial by fire of having a
Yeah.
business. I'm definitely like more reflective. I'm like, okay, everything can be slower. I can calm down. And then I think like having a community of founders has helped
Yes.
see different stages. Cause some people I'm like, oh, you're doing so well on like looking at their social media, and then we'll meet in person, like, oh man, I'm struggling. And I was like, what? And
Oh,
then they're like, you look like you're doing so well. I was like, no, I'm also struggling too. It's like we're all struggling. It's like it's great. So um I
I
think
think that realness is so important, that concept at the end. Like, and you right, you're doing incredible things. We're talking about those incredible things. And the reality is sometimes people can't pay their staff, right? Like cash flow is one of the hardest things as founders.
exactly. And then I've seen a lot of businesses go viral and then like literally crash and burn. So I was like, okay, maybe that's not the goal. And and then after like I took a like because my business kind of launched during the TikTok era.
Yep.
Didn't have a TikTok because I was in the military at the time, and they told us not to have TikTok. So
Yeah.
I jumped on that initial bandwagon of TikTok. But then when I saw the businesses, like, wow, they're doing really good. But then some of them were like literally crash and burn. I was like, oh, it's very important to have a foundation. And
Yeah.
so that's what I tell other business owners. Like maybe you won't get like Oprah your first year, but maybe I didn't need to get Oprah my first year. Maybe I need to build a foundation. And then if I would have got Oprah my second year, it would have been better for me. But
Yeah.
we don't always get to pick when things happen. But it's like you always you should be prepared for the
Yep.
opportunities.
Yeah. You know, and And you spoke earlier about like really sitting in the moment and appreciating. I love that yesterday your post on social. I swear I'm not that big of a creeper, but like on Insta, how you were talking about like it's been the first 6 months. Here are all the things we've done. I love that you took that moment and kind of thought about it. And when you look out, where are you guys going? It sounds like these in real life events went well. Where's your head? Where's your company going? What's your plan?
My head's always all over the place. Like this year, I really want to finish like this custom fabric I'm working on for like the last year and a half. It's like a custom proprietary activewear fabric that we've been working on, and it's like has just been a beast. And I feel like I keep on telling people I'm working on this custom fabric, and it just never ends. But it's like if you're gonna take the time to do something, it has to be done right. If that's gonna be like our signature.
Yes.
And then also I'm trying to see like what other opportunities come up as the year goes on. And then I would like to do another ICONI IRL event this year. That would be great. Like in one of another key supporter cities like DC. That would be great. Or another one in Denver. Because I had fun at the event. Next time I would like to participate because I didn't
Yeah.
participate. I was just so stressed out. I was just watching them do yoga at the highest stress level possible.
Well, welcome to any event that I am hosting. You should something to think about is St. Louis. For any of my St. Louis listeners, happily, I'm sure they would love to have you in St. Louis. So holler at me if that's something you ever want to do. You know, Part of this podcast and where I'm at is really thinking about how can we do things differently and how can we not feel like we have to fit in a certain mold or do it what we're watching on social media. So I'm curious, what are you building or choosing differently in this season in terms of life or leadership?
I'm just choosing to be more reflective and to be more patient. And I know that it's hard for founders, but I think if you like sit in the moments and realize that every season's not go, go, go. Like the last 2 weeks I've been exploring more. Like I went to art galleries and I went to like some networking events, and I was like, I feel like I'm not doing a lot of like iconic work. I'm not like in the middle of the work. I'm like, I have a whiteboard in the middle of my living room. I've been doing like strategy stuff. I was like, shouldn't I be doing more work? But then like taking a step back is like, oh, this is the work that I need to be doing. I do need to be doing things like painting or going to networking events or hiking or something, because that helps my creativity. Like, yes, I'm very like serious, but it's like I can't create from a space of just being like pent up all the time. And then that just leads to founder burnout as well.
Oh, I love that. And going back to that elephant analogy, it helps you to be around and be the next TJ Maxx. I love that. Well, if people want to follow along in your journey and buy some amazing leggings, or any of your activewear in general, how can they find you?
So our website's iconi.com, ICONI.com. And all our social handles are at Iconi Leggings. And then I have LinkedIn, Angel Johnson Iconi. And then my Instagram at CEO Angel J.
Yes. Well, thank you, Angel, for being on the show.